How's it going, everybody? Darren here, aka Dr. Dev, and welcome to today's video on the C# Tips to Improve series, where my goal is to help you do the things that you probably already know how to do, but better. Where better might mean cleaner, more concise, easier to read, and more conventional and standardized, making sure to follow the best practices as outlined by MSDN themselves. In today's video, we're going to be talking about a very nice feature that came out in C# 7 called out variables. But before I actually show you out variables in action, I want to clear one thing up real quick with you guys. So I'll open up my solution and you'll see that the entry point.cs class is started, which houses my main method or my entry point or whatever you want to call it. And in here, we're simply calling execute example, which is a function on a class I've created called out variables. Now, this is the structure that I'm going to use from now on, guys, just so you're aware of it. For my C# tips to improve videos, I will simply create a new class to contain or house the logic relevant to that video. And then I will just modify my entry point to call the appropriate function on the appropriate class for that given video. So now that that's out of the way, I will actually go ahead and get started. So I'll open up my out variables class, which at the moment is pretty much empty. So let's go ahead and start writing something. Before we actually do start comparing the old way to the new way, what I want to do is create a very simple function which can help us to visualize that comparison. So I'll create a very simple function using the try pattern. In this case, it's just going to be a dummy function, but I just want to let you know. So public static bool, and I'll call it try get data or something like that, right? And let's say it takes in a string value and it assigns some out bytes, let's say red, out green, and out byte blue. So just assign some RGBs, and let's say red equals green equals blue equals 255. Okay, and then return true. So like I said, the function isn't actually supposed to be doing anything logical. It's just going to be used to serve the purpose of allowing us to see how we would call the function prior to C# 7 and since C# 7. So to get started, prior to C# 7, I'll just leave a comment here. Prior to C# 7, if I wanted to call this function, what would I have to do? Well, because it expects some out parameters being passed into it, I would have to declare my out parameters somewhere. So I would say red, green, oh, whoops, that's not supposed to be a full stop. Red, green, and blue. So I would declare my byte parameters, and then I would go and say try get data, and I'll just pass in some random string, and I would pass in red, out green, and out blue, like so. And then I would do something, right? That's the way we would do it before. Simple enough. In this case, it doesn't look that ugly because I've declared my bytes all on one line because they all share the same type. But it wouldn't be uncommon for the function to maybe, instead of being bytes, one would be a byte, one would be an int, and then one would be a double, for example. Then we would have to declare these separately. So I would have to say byte red, int green, and double blue, right? I'd have to do it like this. So that's the way I would have to do it if they were different types. So now you can see it's not super clean. I have to declare my variables outside of the statement where I actually want to use them, right? And that's a little bit annoying because I only really care in this particular case about red, green, and blue in here. So why should they be here? It doesn't really make sense. And it's not uncommon. You might even see it. A lot of developers, they declare their variables up at the very top of the enclosing scope, as opposed to where they actually need them. And that's fine. I'm okay with that. I do that myself. But it's a bit annoying, right? Because you can have a load of code here in the middle. You can just have a hell of a load of code here. And then if you're looking down here on line 35, you see, oh, this expects some outs. Where is it? Okay, well, where is it getting these from? Okay, I better go find them. Oh, they're up here. What's their purpose, you know? And it's a little bit annoying. So, yeah, whatever. I'll real quickly I'll just set this 255. Green equals 255 and blue equals 255, right? Just to fix that function. So since C# 7, what can we do? So since C# 7, we can use out variables, which are very much the same as the standard out parameters, but a little bit cleaner in my opinion. I really welcome this change, to be honest. So if I wanted to achieve the same thing as above in C# 7 or after, I would simply do this. If try get data, right? And I'll just pass in my 5 again. Then I would say out byte red, like so, and out int green, out double blue, like that. And this won't actually compile at the moment because I'm using variables with the same names as up above, so they're already declared. But if I just comment that out real quick, I'll show you that this actually does indeed work. So what's happening here is I am actually declaring the variables I want to use in line in the same statement as where I actually want to use them. And that's really cool because what you saw up here basically just becomes that one line. Instead of the 1, 2, 3, 4 lines, I can do the same thing in one line. And it's quite easy to read. It's very clear what their purpose is. Like, obviously this red is being used when we're parsing or when we're calling this function or whatever it may be. It can't be muddied up and have its purpose unclear. It's quite obvious that red is being used for this function and this function alone, at least in this case. And then of course I can just use red. I can use red in here. It's just like a normal byte in this case. Probably one of the cooler things about this feature from my point of view, at least when compared to the old way, is that because we're declaring our variables in line, we actually don't have to specify their types. We can actually use the var keyword and those types will be actually converted implicitly. Which is great because you can't do that in the old way. And what I mean in this case is because the try get data is clearly assigning an out byte for red, an out int for green, and an out double for blue, I don't have to actually specify byte, int, and double here when I call it. I can just say var, var, and var. And that's going to be implicitly determined. That type is going to be implicitly determined. So if I hover over red, red is a byte. If I hover over green, green is an int. If I hover over blue, blue is a double. And that's really cool because you couldn't do that in the old way, because in the old way you had to declare the variable outside. So let's just comment out this, and I'll uncomment out the old way just to show that, to prove that I'm not, talking a lot of BS. So if I take my byte red and change it to var, watch what happens. There we go. Implicitly typed variables must be initialized. So if I want this variable to be implicitly typed, it has to actually be initialized with a value. So that's one big advantage from my point of view, because it's, at least where I work from my professional point of view, we have a couple of functions which maybe, to think of one off the top of the head, we have one which assigns a dictionary as an out variable, right? And that dictionary, of course, has a key type and a value type. So I don't really want to have to, if I'm using the old way, I'll show you what I mean here. So if I comment that again real quick and very quickly uncomment this, I don't want to have to say out dictionary of int to string. You know what I mean? I don't want to have to do that. And instead of doing out dictionary into string, I can just say out var. And because the function knows the type, that type will be implicitly handled for me. And that's great. So that pretty much covers it for this video, guys. It was indeed actually a very short one. I hope you learned something new. I hope it was helpful and it will actually help you to write cleaner and more concise code. If you liked the video, as always, leave me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, please subscribe, let me know what you thought. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys have a wonderful day and I will see you again next time. Take care.